Hi friends, welcome to the channel JIV and CIV Made Simple. Today we are going to discuss our IIBF IT security memory based question along with explanation that were asked on the examination which is held on 10th January 2026. So we have varieties of question available, and we will see the each and every option will have four different concepts, and if in the upcoming examination you will get some related question likewise whatever we have discussed to in this particular session. So let's get started with our first question. The question is, an organization is have you ever wondered how COVID 2019 ensure IT align perfectly with the business goal? So this question pertains to COVID 2019, right? So friends, let's crack this MCQ and learn a memory trick that will make COVID principle super easy to remember. See what is happening, an organization is implementing COVID 2019 to better align its IT infrastructure with a strategic business goal. So to ensure a holistic approach and a tailored the system to enterprise need, which of the following action best reflected integrated application of COVID core component and the principle? So that is the question. So option they have given that they should focus, organization should focus exclusively on build and acquire and implement domain to ensure the latest technology are deployed to meet the stakeholder need. Option B says that separate governance from management, and utilize and use all the seven enablers. There are seven enablers like culture, ethics, organization structure. So to enable all of them. Option C says that they should adopt ISO 27001 as a sole framework, right, for performance measurement. And option number D says that prioritize information and service over people and culture. Prioritize information and service over people and culture. So these are the four options that they have provided, and you have to select. Let's talk about the COVID 2019 basics. So it is a framework for IT governance and management. So it help align IT with a strategy. Right. So that is COVID 2019 framework for IT governance plus management, right? So the principles are that it separate governance from management. On one side we have governance, please understand. So it separate IT governance and it separate the management, okay? And it provide you holistic approach. Which means don't just focus on tech. You need to include people, you need to include culture, right? And you need to include ethics, people, culture, ethics, right, processes, etc. So don't just focus on technology. You should include people, culture, ethics, process, etc. And then there are seven enablers. So besides that, how many enablers are there? Seven enablers, which means they are like building block. These seven enablers are like building block, right? Like culture, ethics, organization structure, process, information, service. And then there are 40 objectives. So COVID has 40 governance and management objective that need support. So these objectives, they need support from all enablers. Right? So these are the key points. So what we have discussed, that first thing is that COVID is the basic framework for IT governance and management that help business align IT with a strategy. Second point is separate governance from management. Governance set direction, management execute them. That's the difference. That is how governance and management are separated through COVID 2019. Then holistic approach, it don't just focus on tech, it includes people, culture, ethics, process and structure. Seven enablers just now I told you, and 40 objectives are there. So friends, now let's look at the option that they have provided. Please understand, these are the basic concepts. So option number A, if you look at, this is that build, acquire and implement domain. Actually, it is too narrow. It is very narrow. Right, it is too narrow. Only one domain, not holistic. So it's only say about only one domain. Right. Only one domain, it is not holistic. So option A is wrong. What about option B? Separate governance from management while ensuring all the seven enablers are utilized to support the 40 governance and management objective. Yes, if you look at the option number B, this is the perfect one, because it clearly states that it separate governance from management, because governance set direction. Yes, please understand, governance always set the direction, while management is someone who execute those direction. That's why governance and management are separated. And already I told you there are 7 enablers who are called the building blocks, right? So B number option is perfect. It separates governance from management and uses all the 7 enabler to support the objective. Yes, B is correct one. What about C? ISO 27001 is great, but COVID is not replaced by other framework. Please understand. You cannot replace this COVID. You cannot replace this COVID with other framework, right? So adopting 27001 standard as a sole framework for performance and measurement. So what I'm telling you that ISO 27001 is great, but COVID is not replaced by other framework. That's why option number C is wrong. What about D? D says that prioritizing information and service enabler our people and culture. So what do you think about option D? Is it correct? See, prioritizing some enabler break the holistic principle. If you prioritize someone, so obviously the holistic principle will break down, right? So option number D is also wrong. The correct answer to this question is option number B. So one way to remember it like this. So you can think of the COVID like say James 7. So there is a way to remember this. Whenever question is asked regarding to COVID, think of them like James 7. What does it mean? So G means governance. G means governance versus management. E means enablers. Enabler means what? Enabler means 7 enablers are there. Then M means management objective. Management objective. There are 40 objective. And S strategic alignment. Strategic alignment. So whenever you hear this COVID, just remember this word James 7, right? For the holistic governance. So James 7 for holistic governance. So what we have discussed, let's have a quick revision. I told you that COVID 2019 includes IT governance and management alignment. Two things it includes fancy, right? Let's break this down in simple term and learn a quick trick to remember the strongest 2FA tool. So basically what is happening, this is a case study presented before you. So an organization is upgrading its identity and access management system. That's called IAM. In short, you call it identity and access management system like IAM. So an organization is upgrading its IAM system to a zero trust model. So to achieve the highest level of security and phishing resistance while adhering to the core principle of 2FA, which of the following implementation strategy is most effective? So you have to tell me that to achieve this while adhering to the 2FA core principle, which implementation strategy is most effective? Option they have given that password plus 4-digit pin via email. You can see primary alphanumeric password plus 4-digit pin via registered email address. Option B, adaptive 2FA system based on behavior and location. Option number C, combining you have to combine the password plus hardware token plus biometric scan. And option number D, 2 position based factors like SMS OTP and push notification. So these are the 4 options that they have given. So let's talk in detail about the 2FA. 2FA means 2-factor authentication. Let's talk about it. So basically what is this 2FA? 2-factor authentication means using 2 different type of security check. Using 2 different security checks. That is called 2FA. So using 2 different security check from different category. First category is something that something right? Like your password, your pin, something that's the other thing. And second thing is something you have. What you have? You have hardware token, right? You have hardware token, you have phone, and something you are. So biometric like fingerprint or the face. So that is called 2-factor authentication. So basically it involves 2 different security check from different category. Something something you have, and something you are. And there is a principle here. The principle is called zero trust principle. What is the name of principle? The principle is called zero trust principle. So what does it say? It says that never trust, always verify, right? It says that never trust, rather always verify. So every access request must be validated. Access request to be validated. So never trust, always verify. That is called zero trust principle. So every access request must be validated. That's called zero trust principle. So two-factor authentication, I told you two different security checks, something you know, something you have, something you are. And zero trust principle say never trust, always verify. So that is the point. So now let's look at the option that we have. Option number A say requiring a primary or alphanumeric password followed by secondary 4-digit pin to the user registered email address. So option number A says that both the password and pin are knowledge based. What do you think? So if both the password and pin are knowledge based, so it is a weak combo, right? So this is not the correct answer. It's not effective one. Now option number B says that adaptive authentication. You can see adaptive authentication. It may sound smart, but it is not two-factor authentication because it is skip the second factor. There is no second factor here. How can you tell that second factor? What about C? So C says that two different position-based factor, SMS plus push. Yes, exactly. This is the correct one, right? Same category. So basically, if you look at the C, it combines knowledge. What is your knowledge? So sorry, we are talking about C here. It combines a knowledge-based factor, that is a password, with a position. Position means hardware token or inherence, which is called biometric. So it combines all of them. That is what I told you. Something that you know, something that you have, something that is called position, something that you know that is called knowledge, something that you are, right? So combine both of them, then that's called two-factor authentication. So it combines knowledge-based factor with a position-based factor or an inherence-based factor. This is the strongest and phishing resistant. That is called two-factor authentication. And the same question was exactly asked in the examination. And option number D says that utilizing two different position-based factor such as SMS-based OTP. No. Actually, two position-based factor, it means same category. So here the category is the same, right? So this is weaker security. Option D is wrong. The correct answer is option number C. So you need to combine a knowledge-based factor with a position-based factor or inherence-based factor. So one way to remember it like this, let me tell you. So one way to remember what we have discussed just now, you can just remember it like this. 2FA means, let me write it down. Two-factor authentication means know plus have or are. Either of the two, have or are. So know means like password, you know your password, right? Have means token, and R means biometric. Looking for study material for certification examination in IT security, you can check out our course. The link is provided in the description section. In this course, you will get unit-wise theory and unit-wise MCQs PDF. As you can see, it has been arranged module-wise. There are 4 separate modules. Inside each module folder, you will see there are unit-wise folder like unit 1, unit 2. Inside each unit folder, you will see separate theory PDF and MCQ PDF. So the MCQ PDF is like this. Each unit PDF consists of 40 to 50 MCQs, and this will help you revise the entire syllabus confidently. And theory PDF consists the theory portion in a short and concise manner. In addition to that, you will get previous year memory based question. There are 3 folders which I have added, and it's being added on continuous basis. So it consists of memory based question which have appeared in the examination. You can check out the entire course. Many aspirants have cracked the paper using our material. So in the description section of the video, I have provided the link. Please go through that link. It will help you crack number 3. So what question number 3 is all about? Let's have a look. So as you can see it here, that there is a logistic company which is designing an automated sorting system for a large warehouse. They need a solution that can identify 100 of items simultaneously on a moving pallet from a distance of 10 meters, even if the tags are not visible. However, they are concerned about the interference because some item contains liquid. So have you ever wondered how warehouse read 100 of tag at once, even from 10 meters away? So let's decode this RFID question. So now the question basically, this is a logistic company. They need an automated sorting system that can identify 100 of item on a moving pallet from 10 meters away, even if tags are not visible, and some item contains liquid also. So which RFID configuration work best? So there are some configuration they have mentioned, like the active HF 13.56 megahertz tag. Second is passive UHF 860 to 960 megahertz tag. Then passive LF 125 kilohertz tag. Active UHF 860 to 960 megahertz beacons. These are the 4 options they have given. So you have to select the correct one. So friends, let's go through each and every option. So first of all, before delving into the question, let's understand what is the basics of RFID. RFID basics. So RFID use the radio waves. RFID, they use the radio waves to identify the tags. They use radio waves to identify the tags. So tags can be active. So when I say active tags, it means battery power. Active tags means battery power, or tags can be passive. So when I say passive, it means powered by reader signal. So two types of tags are there, active tags and passive tags. Active means battery power and passive means reader signal. Now let's talk about the frequency band. Very important aspect we are dealing with, frequency bands. So what is the meaning of frequency bands? So LF means 125 kilohertz. So actually, as the name suggests, it is short range. It is short range in terms of centimeter, and it is great with liquid. It is great with liquid, but slow and no bulk reading. Slow and no bulk reading. That is called, LF, 125 kilohertz. Then we have the HF. HF means, 13.56 megahertz. What happened here? They are medium range. They are of medium range. So up to 1 meter, right? This was just centimeter. Now it is up to 1 meter, and the speed is moderate. Moderate speed. The third type we have is called, UHF. UHF means 860 to 960 megahertz. So actually, it is long range, up to 12 meter plus, right? 12 meter plus. And it is super fast. It supports bulk reading, right? So actually these are the three kinds: LF, HF, UHF. LF means 125 kilohertz, HF means 13.56 megahertz, and UHF means 860 to 960 megahertz, right? So now let's look at the requirement check. Let's do the requirement check. So in this case, as you can see, in this particular case, what they have given, that 10 meter range. Please I'm highlighting it. 10 meter range. Then bulk reading, as you can see, they have mentioned that bulk reading is the main purpose. Let me write it down. 10 meter hertz and bulk reading, and also tags is not visible. Tags not visible. Now the concern is that liquid cause interference. So actually, if we talk about the UHF, UHF is sensitive, but it can be mitigated with shielding and placement. Now let's check the option. Option number A is saying that active HF. So just now I told you that HF can reach 10 meter only, right? Medium range, within near about 1 meter. So they can't reach 10 meter. So here they have mentioned 10 meter. So HF is not applicable because HF range is just near about 1 meter. That's it. Now option number B I think is correct. First of all, let's look at option number C, passive LF. So LF is great with liquid, but the range is only a few centimeter. LF I told you, low frequency. So range is just few centimeters. So they can't reach it. So passive LF is not the correct answer. What about active UHF? So active UHF work, but the question say tags are not active. In the question it is mentioned that non-active tags. You can see even if the tags are not visible, tags are not active. So passive UHF support long range and bulk reading. Two things it support. First checklist, see we have three checklists. So what are the three checklists? The first checklist is 10 meter range. Okay. Second checklist is bulk reading. Fine. And the third checklist is tags not visible. Tags not visible. These are the three checklists. So if we talk about the UHF, active UHF, option number D, it satisfies both the two conditions. Right. Sorry, not the third one. Actually, let me erase it. It's actually it satisfies condition number. Let me write down the condition number to be more precise. Just wait a minute. So let me write a condition. Condition number 1, condition number 2, condition number 3. It satisfies condition number 1 and 2, but condition number 3 is not satisfied because the passive UHF support long distance range and bulk reading, but just designed across liquid interference. So but tags is not visible. That's why the correct answer is option number B, passive UHF. So passive UHF support long range bulk reading, just designed across around liquid interference. This is the correct answer. The correct answer is option number B, right? So let me give you the memory trick to remember this RFID design. So whenever you can, this is called RFID range ladder. So LF means what? LF means low range. LF means low range, few centimeter only. HF means you can think of halfway. This way you can remember halfway, like 1 meter. Then UHF means ultra range. So when I say ultra range, it means 10 meter plus. So LF is animals, HF is library, and UHF is pallet and logistic. So what we have discussed here, we have discussed that RFID types we have LF, HF, and UHF. So when I say passive UHF, it is based for bulk reading plus long range. Passive UHF is based for, bulk reading plus what? Bulk reading plus long range. Passive UHF is based for it. And liquid is a challenge for UHF. How do we fix this liquid issue? So liquid interference can be fixed with, this is the big challenge for UHF. You can fix it with shielding. You can fix this liquid part with shielding. So the correct answer to this question is option number B. Right. I hope it is crystal clear. Passive UHF is the correct answer. So this particular table, it clearly summarizes everything. Low frequency, high frequency, ultra high frequency. Frequency range you can see, read range you can see, data speed you can see, liquid metal resistance is very high, and this high HF moderate, and passive active UHF is very low. That's why passive UHF was the correct answer. Now let's have a look at the next question. Ever wondered why auditor stress independence and trust during IT audit or IS audit? Have you ever wondered? So, auditors, they stress, auditor stress a lot during stress independence and trust during IT audit. Right. The question is why. Let's crack this MCQ. So what is happening here? A lead auditor is conducting an IS audit for major bank to ensure compliance with RBI cyber security guideline and PMLA transaction monitoring. The auditor emphasizes independence and uniform evidence while addressing the principal agent conflict. So they emphasize on, they put more focus on addressing the independence and uniform evidence. So the question is, which combination of action and theoretical justification best represent a comprehensive IS audit approach? So 4 options they have given. Option A, focus only on planning phase, justified by agency theory. Option B says that field work with vulnerability scan and log review, justifies by theory of inspired confidence. Option number C says that prioritize reporting for ISO 27001, ignore planning, based on in the inductive theory of professionalism. And option number D says risk based planning, discard auditor independence for faster evidence gathering. So these are the 4 options they have given. Let's go through each and every option step by step. So let's have a look at the first option. So what does the first option say? So let me tell you the audit process basic. So what is the basics of the audit process? The basics is very simple. So there are phases, like first of all you plan. The first phase is called planning. After planning, you have field work. Second is called field work. Then you report. After field work, you report. And after reporting, you follow up. So these are the steps: planning, field work, reporting, and follow up. And one more thing I want to tell you, that independence is non-negotiable. Independence, it is non-negotiable. So that was given by Mauds and Saraf postulate, right? So now there are some theories related to this IS audit. The one theory is agency theory. What does the agency theory says? It says that it is principal versus agent theory. Principal versus agent, right? So principal means the board, and agent means IT managers, right? So they need verification. They don't need just blind trust. So what agency theory need? They need verification. Agency theory need verification, not blind trust. Second theory we have is called theory of inspired confidence. Theory of inspired confidence. So basically, their auditor provide assurance to the stakeholder. Auditor provide assurance to whom? To a stakeholder. So it means building trust in the financial and IT system. That is called, theory of inspired confidence. So actually, they build trust. You can say trust building. And the third is, inductive theory. So inductive theory means build on experience, but cannot skip structure scope. It is built on experience. Now let's look at the option. So the option number A, actually it says that it is not about agency theory, which says that actually I told you that focus solely on planning phase. So actually agency, if you look at the agency theory, they need verification, not just planning. I told you agency theory based on principal versus agent, right? It required verification also in addition to the planning. So verification also is required. That's why option number A is wrong. Second is all about the theory of inspired confidence, which I told you that auditor provide. So prioritizing reporting and remediation for ISO 27001. while ignoring the planning phase to save the time. Actually, this inductive theory does not ignore the planning phase. This is the super important. Independence, so skipping planning violate the audit standard. This is wrong. What about option D? Utilizing a risk-based approach during planning to address the Basel requirement. So what risk-based approach is all about? So actually, independence cannot be compromised. This is wrong. The correct answer is option number B. Field work, which means testing control via scan and logs, and independence, inspired confidence. These are the two major things. Right. Option number B is the correct one. So this is the one keyword you can remember it like this. Let me write it down. One way to remember it, PFRC, which means planning. After planning, we have the field work, planning, field work, reporting, and then follow up. Planning, field work, reporting, and then follow up. TIC is called, theory of inspired confidence. Theory of inspired confidence. Actually, it builds trust. Right. So whenever you hear audit plus trust, it means, two things. Field work plus TIC. Right. So let's look at the quick revision point. So just now we have discussed audit, IS audit planning. There are some phases. What are the phases? Just now I told you planning, fieldwork, reporting, and then follow up, PFRC. These are the planning, fieldwork, reporting, and follow up. Independence is mandatory, non-negotiable. You cannot negotiate with independence. And theory of inspired confidence, say it provides assurance to the stakeholder. I hope till now everything is crystal clear. Let's look at the next question that we have. So the next question is, RTO versus RPO. That is called recovery time objective versus recovery point objective. So we are talking about the disaster recovery plan. A commercial bank is reviewing the disaster recovery plan. The bank recovery time objective for its Forex platform is set at 2 hours, while recovery point objective is set as 15 minutes. Right. So let's clear this one. Bank Forex platform has RTO 2 hours, RPO 15 minutes. During a cyber attack drill which is happening, recovery took 90 minutes, and but the last clean backup was 45 minutes before the disaster. Now, which statement is true to the context of disaster recovery theory? So option number A says that they meet both it RTO and RPO because the total recovery time 90 minutes was less than sum of RTO and RPO target. B says that it meet RTO but fail it RPO. C says that you can classify as a prevention success under DLM. It is classified as a prevention success under the disaster logic model. And option D says that failed it RTO because recovery point must be larger than the recovery time. So these are the 4 options they have given. So now let me explain what is this RTO RP all about, because DRP is a very important topic, disaster recovery planning, on which questions are regularly being asked in the examination. So to the context of DRP, RTO, let's talk about the RTO. So this RTO means recovery time objective. Recovery time objective means how fast can we get the system back online, right? So RTO means how fast we get system back online. That is called RTO. So target is RPO. Let's talk about the RPO. So RPO means recovery point objective. RPO means recovery point objective. So what it means? How much data can we afford to lose? It simply means how much data we can afford to lose. How much data we can afford to lose. That's called RPO, recovery point objective. So target they have given here 15 minutes. Right, RPO target is 15 minutes and actual loss is 45 minutes. Right, so it is failure. So why this important? Because failing RPO means losing transaction between last backup and crash. So it is a compliance risk as per RBI and PMLA. Now let's look at the option A. Option A says that option A says meet both RTO and RPO because 90 minutes is less than RTO plus RPO. Actually it is wrong. RTO and RPO are independent, right, not additive. What about option C? It says that according to DLM, this scenario is classified as a prevention success. Actually, there is no rule that DLM does not classify this as prevention success. What about D? The bank failed it RTO because the recovery point always be equal to get. There's no rules like that. They are completely independent. There is no rule that RPO should be larger than RTO. The correct answer to this question is option number B. Right. So option number B is correct. It is perfect. It meet RTO but it fail RPO. So one way to remember this RTO and RPO. So when you can think of RTO like restore time, restoration time, and you can think of the RPO like recent point. This is just my way of teaching the thing. So RTO means restore time, RPO means recent point. So RTO, whenever you see this word RTO, think about forward in time. Forward in time means how long to recover. Simple word, you ask yourself, how long to recover? That's called RTO, recover time, restore time. And RPO means backward. This is backward in time. That's the difference. This way you can remember. RTO is forward in time, how long it will take to recover, and RPO is backward in time, which means how much data lost. That's the difference. So one way, just remember time versus data. On one side of RTO we have time, on one side of RPO we have data. That's it. So what we have learned, RTO is the downtime tolerance. It means 90 minutes and 2 hours is the timeline, and RPO is the data loss tolerance. 15 minutes, right? Please understand. So that is this particular table clearly signify each and every aspect, clarify each and every aspect regarding RTO downtime, RPO data loss, and I have made you clear each and every aspect. Now friends, let's look at the next question. So ever wondered why trusted employees sometimes turn into insider threat? There are some trusted employee, and those trusted employee sometimes turns into insider threat. Do you know why it happened? So let's decode this question using the fraud triangle and learn a quick memory trick to spot the warning signal. So the question is, a financial institution discovered that a senior administrator who recently failed past for promotion has been accessing sensitive client file outside of a standard working hour and attempting to transfer large data set to a personal cloud storage account. So a senior admin feeling passed over for promotion access sensitive file after hour and try to transfer large data set to personal cloud storage. So applying the fraud triangle and mitigation approach, which analysis of the situation is most accurate? So the question is, there is a case of negligent insider threat, and the most effective mitigation would be periodic security awareness training to correct the behavior. So two words are given, negligent insider threat and fix it with awareness training. Option number B. So employer feeling of being passed over feeling means rationalization, unmonitored access, and opportunity. And these are the core elements of the fraud triangle. Option C says that privilege abuse. Breach involve what? Privilege abuse. So it means accidental leak as per the UEBA theory. As per the user and entity behavior analytics theory. Option D. Pressure from financial grudge. You can fix with least privilege access. So now let's look at the step-by-step explanation. First of all, let's clear the fraud triangle basis. What this fraud triangle is all about. So three things are there. First thing is the pressure. Pressure means financial or personal stress. Stress may be financial stress or it may be personal stress. That's called pressure. Second thing is opportunity. Opportunity means ability to commit fraud. Ability to commit fraud without detection. You commit fraud without detection, that is called opportunity. Second point. Third thing is rationalization. So what is rationalization? Rationalization means justifying unethical behavior like company or me. So that's called fraud triangle. 2-3 words are there. POR. Rationalization means what? Justifying unethical behavior. That's company or me. Now let's look the scenario analysis. So basically, feeling passed over. So this particular senior administrator, he felt passed over. So this is the feeling of rationalization. And unmonitored access. And this is one more thing as the given, that unmonitored access. So what is the meaning of unmonitored access? Unmonitored access means what? Ability to come. So basically, opportunity. So and malicious. So if you look at the malicious intent, so option number A, there is a case of negligent insider threat, and the most effective mitigation would be a periodic security awareness. Actually, they have mentioned here negligent. No, it's not negligence. It is a malicious intent. Clearly, they are passing the files, large data set to personal. So this is a malicious intent, not negligence. So option A is ruled out. Option C is about UEBA, user and entity behavior analytics. So it helped to detect it, but option C wrongly call it accidental. This is called, they are calling it accidental leak. No, it's not an accidental leak. Actually, this is now next is the least privilege. So least intentional, not accidental, rather incident, like intentional. And option number D is also talks about the least privilege. So actually it is good mitigation, but the main theory here is the fraud triangle. So to the context of this question, we have the correct answer, that is option number B. Employee feeling of being passed over represent rationalization with their unmonitored access represents opportunity, and these are the core element of the fraud triangle, right? So you can think of the fraud triangle like PRO, pro. Please remember this word pro. So pro, P stand for pressure, R stands for rationalization, and O stands for opportunity. PRO, pressure, rationalization, opportunity. So when you see insider threat, check for PRO factor, right? I hope it is crystal clear. So malicious insider, fraud triangle, pressure, rationalization, opportunity. How to detect? UEPA, that is user and entity behavior analytics, help you to detect, right? So malicious insider is a kind of fraud triangle. UEBA help you to detect it, and mitigation, for mitigation you should do monitor and you should have least privilege access. This is how you mitigate it. So the correct answer to this question is option number B. Friends, we have some more question available with us. So see the difference between malicious insider and negligent insider. That's the difference, right? UABA is a detection method. Trigger